Channel Y. Channel Y. A South Asian Canadian channel.
And you're watching Channel Y.
The biggest South Asian media group, Y Media. Y Media. Y Media has newspaper, midweek, radio, South Asian Pulse.
Hi, I'm Amitabh Bachchan and you're listening to South Asian Pulse.
Hi, this is Amir Khan and you're listening to South Asian Pulse.
अब हर दिन सुने GTA का नंबर 1 रेडियो स्टेशन FM 91.9
Television. You are watching Channel Y. Channel Y.
Prime Minister, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Online, SouthAsianDaily.com. The biggest South Asian media group, Y Media.
This part of the program is brought to you by Midweek Newspaper, published every Tuesday.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Brief. I am Ramona Singh, bringing you the latest headlines in local, national, and international news, as well as business and entertainment news. And our coverage tonight starts in Ukraine with Russia's invasion, the deadly invasion of Ukraine for the last 23 days. And here's what we know so far. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Ukraine. Russia has fired 6 missiles at Lviv earlier today. The western city is near the Polish border and has been relatively untouched by Russian attacks. Fears are that it may continue in the coming days. Casualties were reported after the debris from a downed rocket sparked a fire at a residential building in Kyiv today. Ukraine says it has launched a counteroffensive aimed at gaining control of the capital's suburbs, and hundreds of people remain buried under the rubble of the theater in the devastated city of Mariupol that was hit by a Russian airstrike earlier this week. President Zelensky said more than 130 people have been rescued so far, but officials say rescue efforts have been hindered by the complete breakdown of social services in the city and fear of future Russian attacks. A World Food Program, the WFP, officials have said that the food supply chains in Ukraine are collapsing, with a portion of infrastructure destroyed and many grocery stores and warehouses now empty. There are concerns supplies are running out, and the WFP convoy has not been able to enter the devastated city of Mariupol. And meanwhile, in Russia, Vladimir Putin is running his own misinformation campaign after he threatened Russians who sympathize with the Western, who's calling them Western sympathizers in yesterday's address on television. But in a rare public speech at the National Stadium in Moscow, Vladimir Putin praised Russian unity over what he calls the special operation in Ukraine. As Putin finished his speech, the broadcast was suddenly cut off and state television showed patriotic songs. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov blamed the technical failure for the cutoff, as he's feeling the pressure of not being able to invade Ukraine the way he thought he would in a shorter amount of time. The misinformation campaign has increased in Russia, as well as very high censorship of the internet, not allowing the Russian people to see what's actually going on from platforms of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and other news organization websites. And other foreign news organizations have left Russia in terms of being able to report on it because of other sanctions that the Russian president has put in place to ensure that the information does not get through to his people. But we have seen that there has been a fight by the Russian people to increase their availability, their access to the internet through VPN downloads to be able to see what's going on. And as there have been protests in Russia against the leaders' war in Ukraine, they have been set apart and arrested. So he's trying his best, and now he's stepped up by being on stage to show that Russia's winning, even though all cases show otherwise. And Russia has also stepped up against the sanctions that have been placed on the country since its invasion started February 24th. Russia is looking internally to proposing a 10-year ban on foreign firms which don't return back to Russia by May 1st. So that's only giving them, a month and a bit to be able to come back to Russia and do business in Russia. Since a number of foreign companies have suspended their work in Russia in terms of services and investments in the country, it has plunged tens of thousands of citizens into a state of uncertainty about their future work and well-being, as many of them were employed by these foreign companies, national companies. An appeal was sent to the Ministry of Economic Development by Russian State Duma deputies saying, I ask you to evaluate the feasibility of determining the conditions for the return of these companies to allow them to promptly restore their activities until May 1st, 2022, or to impose a ban on commercial activities for a period of 10 years for those enterprises that do not wish to restore work in Russia before the proposed date, was in the appeal. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin supported the government's idea of introducing external management for foreign companies leaving Russia. Experts have said the appointment of a temporary administration at foreign enterprises is more compromise option than the direct nationalization of business. And Ukraine war could hit a global growth, says the Organization for Economic Development. They released a report that said the impact of the war could also cause a deep recession in Russia if it's sustained, and could cut global economic growth by more than 1% point in the first year after the war. It also warned that the conflict could push up prices globally about 2.5%, although Russia and Ukraine only make up a small percentage of the global economy. They're huge producers of raw materials, so prices of oil, gas, metal, and chemical essentials to fertilizer productions have increased in these past few weeks and look to continue to increase. New research shows that oil prices will remain elevated by 1/3, gas prices by 85%, and wheat by 90%. Outside of Russia and Ukraine, the first level of impact will be on Europe, which will also be affected up to 1.4%, which will be knocked off its economy due to the dependence for energy and food exports from Russia and from Ukraine. And Germany's GDP growth forecasts have been halved due to Ukraine's crisis. The Kiel Institute for the World Economy almost halved its forecast for Germany's GDP growth in 2022 from 4% to 2.1%. The annual inflation rate in Germany is expected to rise to 5.8% this year, the highest since the country's reunification more than 30 years ago, according to the Institute. The Ukraine crisis delays the return to pre-COVID-19 levels into the second half of the year and is putting a noticeable strain on the German economy and increases the already strong inflation pressures. The economic turmoil caused by the Ukrainian crisis of Russia's invasion is likely to cost Germany around 90 billion euros. That is $99 billion in economic output this year and next year, according to the Institute. And India is in the news. India has been said that it's taking advantage of the Russian offer to sell its crude oil cheap and bear the cost of insurance and transportation. India may import as much as 2 million tons, or roughly 15 million barrels of crude oil. Indian government officials revealed that in recent days, India had reached an agreement with Russia to import 3 million barrels of crude oil, which will be delivered in May. To get more supplies, the Indian government plans to buy oil from Russia at a preferred price to cushion the impact of rising oil prices. One of Indian officials said the offer for Russian crude were around 20% lower than the global benchmark, and that insurance and shipping were covered by Russia, and this was a good deal for them to take on, even though the Western countries as well as NATO members look down on this fact of India taking advantage of this opportunity and ensuring that Russia is still able to do business and not putting sanctions against Russia or condemning their action. Indian officials also said that the deal for the 3 million barrels of crude was part of an agreement between Indian Oil Corp and Rosneft Oil. The two sides initially struck a deal in 2020 that offered India the option of importing about 14 million barrels of crude from Russia by the end of 2022. But the invasion of Ukraine have sped up the talks, and the deal has gone through now and started. They said, we're fulfilling this contract that is beneficial to India, is what the Indian officials have said, adding that India may buy more crude oil from Russia, given that many crude deals between India and Russia and the fact that the 3 million barrel that it's said to have purchased for the month of May is still below the consumption needs of India, which is about 4.5 million barrels per day. And US President Biden spoke to China President Xi, and he talked about Russia as one of the main concerns and the deadly invasion in Ukraine. The President, Joe Biden, had this call earlier today with China's president, and they discussed what this means and the cost for China of doing business with Russia and also supporting them against sanctions that have been placed on them by Western countries. The two leaders, it was their first phone call since a video summit in November 2021. It came after Moscow was accused by the UK, the US, France, Albania, Ireland, Norway of war crimes, and also as well as France, which claimed that the Russian President Vladimir Putin was only pretending to be interested in negotiating a peace deal. As we saw, both sides, from the Ukrainian side as well as the Russian side, have been doing many talks to be able to reach a ceasefire. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also warned that repeatedly that Putin will turn to use chemical weapons or may threaten to use nuclear weapons as sanctions and setbacks on the ground have slowed or weakened the Russian conventional strength, is what Putin had in mind when he started the invasion 23 days ago. And the Biden administration has gathered evidence of war crimes as these attacks continue on civilians in Ukraine. And the top priorities now are to continue dialogue and negotiation and avoid civilian casualties, prevent a humanitarian crisis, and cease fighting and end the war as soon as possible. Those were the words by the Chinese president, saying that he wants to see nothing more but to see peace between the two countries as the talks concluded. And in national news, Canada launches new temporary residence pathway to welcome those fleeing war in Ukraine. Earlier today, Sean Fraser, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, announced that the launch of the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel. The program is a special one that accelerates the temporary residency pathway for Ukrainians seeking refuge in Canada. Under this program, Ukrainians and their immediate family members of any nationality may stay in Canada as temporary residents for up to 3 years. Applicants need to apply online for a Canadian visitor visa and provide their biometrics, which are fingerprints and a photo. This was something that has been criticized by the NDP leader saying, sorry, not the NDP, the Bloc Québécois leader saying that people who are leaving their homes in a matter of minutes because they're under siege and being attacked necessarily don't have their documentation and what they need. But these are requirements. Applicants are encouraged to apply for a 3-year open work permit at the same time as their visa application. This permit will allow them to work in Canada, and under this special program, normal visitor visa or work permit requirements have been waived. So these are special, it's a special situation. And for Ukrainian children, they can register to elementary school or high school as soon as they arrive to Canada and start school as soon as possible. And for post-secondary education, it is said that one can apply for a study permit when they arrive to Canada. Applicants who do not have a valid passport may still apply, and Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada will issue a single journey travel document on a case-by-case basis where they see appropriate. Ukrainian workers, students, and visitors and their family members who are already in Canada may also benefit from the measures, as they may apply to extend their visitor status or work permit for 3 years and apply for a new work permit or study permit and extend their existing permit. And it's also saying that all these fees for the applications are waived for this program. The government of Canada is also calling on employers who wish to support Ukrainians with offers of employment to register the job offers on job banks. It is a website, it's a federal government website that will have a special page for Ukrainians who need to seek employment here. The job bank will then work with local organizations and employers to help connect Ukrainians seeking work who are eligible for those work to the community and the employers. Ukrainian and their family members are exempt from Canada's COVID-19 vaccination entry requirements. However, they must meet all the other public health requirements for travel, such as quarantine and testing once when they arrive. And as inflation rises, Canadians are cutting back on spending on groceries and restaurants, shows new poll data. A new poll by Leger suggests that Canadians are looking for ways to cut back on their spending and to decrease their cost of living, as they're concerned due to the inflation rate rises. The poll was 1,515 Canadians. It was taken from March 11th to March 13th. But this cannot be assigned a margin of error because the online panels are not considered a truly random sample. But the results of the poll showed that 4/5 of respondents to the Leger poll have started or planned to buy cheaper items at the grocery stores to save on food bills and cut back on how much food they throw out to stretch every dollar. And we know that when you cut back on food items in the grocery store, that you're buying more frozen items and less fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. 3/4 of and also canned foods, which also may not be as nutritious as fresh fruits and vegetables. 3/4 of respondents plan to cut spending on household items and eat from local restaurants less frequently. About 1 in 2 were already using their vehicles less to save on gasoline prices at the pumps as they get higher and higher, and almost 1/3 are looking at buying an electric vehicle as a solution to the rising gas prices. 4/5 of the respondents said inflation was having a serious impact on their household, and the financial squeeze may only worsen as inflation rates are expected to climb even higher. Statistic Canada reported this week that the annual inflation rate in February was 5.7%, year-over-year increase in the consumer index not seen in 31 years. And in local news. Ontario is launching 5 new en-route electric vehicle charging stations, which is timely manner of the high increase in gas prices. The 5 new fast charging stations are at Ingleside, Tilbury North, Tilbury South, Woodstock, and Innisfil en-route stations. This launch brings the total number of en-route stations with EV fast chargers to 11. And Doug Ford was in the news as he is only weeks away to a provincial election on June 2nd. He unveiled a strategy for critical minerals worth $3.5 billion to the Ontario economy. Ontario's to capitalize on the growing global demand for minerals that are crucial for technology such as electric vehicle batteries, smartphones, and laptops. Critical minerals, including nickel, cobalt, lithium, and platinum, are already a 3.5 billion a year industry in Ontario. They're classified as critical because their essential role in the production of specialized technologies that are widely used now. Their supply is also typically at a higher risk than the rest of the mining sector because of the geopolitical and market demand. China, Russia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are currently among the biggest global sources of various critical minerals. And since Russia's war in Ukraine and the sanctions slapped on the country's economy make Ontario's announcement very timely and very much needed. The Ford government wants to position Ontario as a reliable supplier of the critical minerals, and he says that this will be a 53-page strategy which will be released as a comprehensive path to a 5-year roadmap to be able to achieve that. And in business news, and as we go into almost the 4th week of the war in Ukraine, the deadly invasion by Russia, we're now seeing that the war is destabilizing the digital gig economy. The gig economy is one of the clearest examples of globalization that can show that anybody working from anywhere can offer their services online to a company as a freelancer anywhere around the world and be able to provide the work they can do on a contract basis. It connects companies with qualified workers around the world. And many of those contractors live in Ukraine and Russia. A 2017 University of Oxford study found that Ukraine and Russia represent the 7th and the 12th largest global suppliers of digital gig work, respectively, meaning it's a really tough time for gig workers and companies hiring them. So what does this actually mean? In Russia, tens of thousands of gig workers have been barred from platforms like Upwork due to economic sanctions against the country. In Ukraine, many gig workers are still working, but others have had to push their deadlines or put their projects on hold and pause them as, of course, the growing concerns of almost more than 3 million refugees, Ukrainians leaving their country and being refugees in surrounding countries. So what does this mean for American companies and Canadian companies or any of the Western companies that use these services by Ukrainians and Russians? Well, what this means is company platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, or Freelancer.com are finding it harder to find highly skilled talent in fields including software development, graphic design, and video editing. Countries like Ukraine and Russia have attracted many American and European countries because the workers are well-educated, tech-savvy, and willing to work for lower wages than their American or Western European counterparts. The continued conflict could lead to further destabilization and exposing how the gap is growing between gig workers and companies that need that much needed expertise and talent. And if you'd like to support Ukrainian gig workers, Upwork is allowing direct donations through their platform. And Russia and Belarus are losing more of their apps as Russians and people who reside in Belarus are seeing that since the invasion began and since the sanctions have included with companies leaving Russia or stopping investments, some of those moves are showing on Apple's App Store as well as Android's App Store. Apple regularly removes old and outdated apps, and in the first and second week of February, 3.4 thousand apps disappeared from both the Russian App Store. And between February 24th and March 14th, 7,000 apps vanished from the Russian App Store. That's a 105% increase. Russian ally Belarus, which is now experiencing sanctions from some of the NATO members countries, have also saw an increase of 73% of the App Store removals. And the several apps that we're talking about are from gaming, health, music, productivity apps, and the loyalty apps for brands that no longer are doing business in Russia have also vanished on the App Store. There's only one type of app, actually, I should say, that has increased its terms of downloads, and that's VPNs, with Russians trying to be able to get access around Putin's ban on social media. The top 10 VPN apps saw a 4.2 million install in those same weeks. That is that's a 2,200% increase. That is all the time we have now for the Daily Brief. Please join us on social media, engage with us, and you can watch all our previous episodes. And until Monday, I am Ramona Singh. Stay happy and God bless. Take care.
You are watching Channel Y. Channel Y, a South Asian Canadian channel.
And you're watching Channel Y.
The biggest South Asian media group, Y Media. Y Media has newspaper, midweek, radio, South Asian Pulse.
Hi, I'm Amitabh Bachchan, and you're listening to South Asian Pulse.
Hi, this is Amir Khan, and you're listening to South Asian Pulse.
अब हर दिन सुने GTA का नंबर 1 रेडियो स्टेशन FM 91.9
Television. You are watching Channel Y. Channel Y.
Prime Minister, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Online, SouthAsianDaily.com. The biggest South Asian media group, Y Media.